Well, welcome back. While returning from Long Island on Air Force One on Friday, President Donald Trump announcing that he was making a change. He went to Twitter. He said he was replacing now former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus with Homeland Security Secretary retired General John Kelly, who Mr. Priebus says is a brilliant pick for the job.
I formally resigned yesterday. The president was great. He wanted to include me in figuring out how and who would be a great successor and a good chief of staff. I think General Kelly is a brilliant pick. And I just, like I said, talked to him, talked to the president. We'll be working on a transition here for a couple of weeks together with General Kelly.
Reince Priebus speaking with Wolf Blitzer. Let's bring in Ed O'Keefe in New York and Hogan Gidley in Washington. Ed is a CBS News political contributor. He is also a congressional reporter for the Washington Post. Hogan is a CBSN political contributor and a Republican strategist. And Ed, first of all, great piece in the Post this morning about the color, the behind the scenes of last night's health care vote.
Thank you.
But Hogan, let me start with you. And I want to ask you, what do you make of this latest shakeup? Priebus out.
Yeah, he's one of the shortest-serving chiefs of staff in history. Look, I think that it's obvious that Donald Trump is looking to make some changes on staff. We've seen some volatility from the get-go in a lot of ways, only because, when you're in positions of power and you have some big personalities, I mean, sparks fly. I think it's been pretty well documented in the press that there have been some arguments amongst staff members. It looks like Mr. Priebus, who I've known for a while and was great at the RNC, never one to live in Washington long. It appeared as though he didn't have complete autonomy as a chief of staff. He wasn't the only gatekeeper that protected the president from other folks. It seemed like a lot of other staffers had access to the president. Not a typical structure, if you will, inside a White House. But again, this is an atypical administration, an atypical president, and someone who won in an atypical fashion. So it's kind of par for the course as I see it so far.
Atypical all the way around. Ed, I want to talk to you about congressional reaction to the news today because, this is Reince Priebus, sort of an establishment Republican, someone with close ties to a lot of Republican lawmakers in Washington. And we know that a lot of them were getting upset over the president's treatment of Jeff Sessions, who, of course, is also a former Republican lawmaker. What has the reaction been on the Hill to the ouster of Reince Priebus and the replacement with General Kelly?
Sure. Let's start at the top with the House Speaker, Paul Ryan, who's a fellow resident of the Badger State, Wisconsin. Close with Priebus, has been for years. They sort of came up together in national Republican politics, and he wished his friend well. Reaction to the Kelly pick actually got some early plaudits from guys like Lindsey Graham, of course, national security hawk and someone who, like Trump, has an affinity for generals, said that was a good, smart choice. And that's a signal that several establishment Republican types are going to be okay with this decision, and that Trump didn't pick somebody who perhaps was less of a known quantity to lawmakers. But I'll tell you this, having talked to members of the House and the Senate, Republicans were concerned about this day and what would happen once Priebus is gone, because while Priebus was running the RNC and maybe didn't have practical congressional or administration experience previously, like in the Bush years, he at least knew members of Congress and had relationships with them because of the political work they had done together. And he was seen as one of the few sort of channels that they had into the White House to get a sense of what was going on and to convey their concerns or their priorities to the administration and to the president. So with him gone and with John Kelly coming in, who revered Marine general, has earned good reviews for the first few months of running the Homeland Security Department, less known, however, on Capitol Hill, and has had a pretty combative relationship early on with Democrats, particularly over immigration policy, as the administration has stepped up its enforcement of immigration laws.
Hogan, I want to talk to you about the politics of this because, as you well know, in politics, a narrative is very hard to change. And once people get an impression of a particular politician or of an administration, it's kind of hard to change their mind on that. And no matter whether you are a fan of this president or not, it's hard to escape the narrative right now that this is a White House that's in crisis mode. We've seen the dysfunction playing out in public this week on a level and scale that really nobody has ever seen before. So John Kelly comes in, but at the end of the day, it's this president that's going to have to change the narrative. How does he do it?
Well, first of all, I would reject the premise. I don't think it's a White House in crisis. I mean, Ed made the point that
really,
yes, I think Ed made the point that Reince Priebus was someone who knew everyone on the Hill, and it gave knew a lot of congressmen, knew a lot of senators. So it gave some of those folks some calm and sense of understanding of what was going on in the White House. The problem was, what did those relationships get him? I mean, they didn't repeal or replace Obamacare so far. They're having a tough time getting off the ground in so many other areas. So I don't think it's a White House in crisis per se. I think it's something that...
Well, how would you describe it then?
Well, I mean, look, I think it's extremely volatile right now, but this White House has seen an unprecedented amount of incoming. The palace intrigue over there seems to top the newscasts and the headlines every single day. It's full of rumor and innuendo and unnamed sources and sources within the White House. I think it's something that we haven't seen, quite frankly, in a long time. And remember, Bill Clinton had a tough first 2 years. It wasn't until the Oklahoma City bombing where he began to get his footing and turn things around in that administration, obviously moving on into an easy re-elect. But look, I saw a tweet today, and the tweet read, "Today has been a long year." And I got to chuckle from that because it seems every day feels like a year so far in the administration.
Rick, it's Friday, and remember on Monday, the president's son-in-law was talking to the Senate Intelligence Committee about his alleged dealings with Russians. Went to see the House Intelligence Committee on Tuesday. You had the president trash-talking the attorney general on Wednesday. Thursday was the communications director trash-talking everyone else that he works with in the West Wing. And then today's news. So, you know, yeah, it has been a long year.
Story.
And then the Cub Scouts
story.
And John McCain pulling a fast one on them this morning and upending health care. Oh, yeah, and the North Koreans are launching missiles. You know, any of that is enough to cause crisis in a normal White House. But as Hogan said, this is atypical.
I want to ask you, Ed, if I could stay with you for a minute about health care.
Yep.
Because, again, you really did write the piece that captured the behind the scenes of last night's dramatic vote. I must admit I was up late watching it on my couch and just mesmerized by the whole thing. You couldn't have scripted it any more dramatically as far as John McCain coming in and casting that deciding vote. But what is the story with health care and the legislative agenda of the Republicans moving forward now that last night's vote went the way that it did?
It's stalled for now. Monday they're just going to come back and do some nominations because that's really all they can do at this point. There were a bunch of Democrats and Republicans talking today about finding a way to cut a deal. The problem is you have conservative Republicans who are concerned about the prospects of that, guys like Ted Cruz or members of the House Freedom Caucus who are more conservative and concerned about cutting deals with Democrats. But in the Senate, at this point, the only way something's going to move forward, it would seem, is if there's an agreement between the two parties on making some fixes, maybe to shoring up the exchanges or reducing prescription drug prices or things like that. And yet at the same time, Republicans are still eager to fulfill their campaign pledge, which is to undo this law, at least partially. And so we'll see. You know, we're about to enter a period of inactivity, official inactivity, if you will, with a recess. But that is likely to give members of both parties some time to sort of sit and think about what exactly could be done. The problem is whether it'll actually get any floor time when they get back after Labor Day, because you've got to deal with tax reform, a budget, raising the debt limit. There may be more issues with foreign affairs, and of course the investigations that continue into the president's alleged involvement with Russians. And so, you know, the big reason, obviously, they're upset about what happened early this morning is that it was, you know, a big setback and an embarrassment for the party. But the reality also is that they're running out of calendar time for this to come up again, which might make it difficult for them to fulfill the pledge at all.
Hogan, John McCain gave that dramatic speech on the floor earlier this week in the motion to proceed. That's a vote that he cast in the affirmative to help his party. But him coming to the floor last night and giving that dramatic thumbs down, basically sinking the skinny repeal bill that the Republicans have put forward. I have to imagine that in the biopic that Hollywood will make one day, called The Maverick, that will absolutely be one of the last scenes of that film. But when John McCain spoke about bipartisanship, when he took to the floor and talked about the need for compromise between Republicans and Democrats, is that something that you could see happening now in light of the vote early this morning?
I mean, it could. That's kind of the in vogue thing to talk about right now. But look, this is kind of the lot that Republicans are in. I mean, they caught the car. They have the White House now. They you know, obviously have the Senate, expanded their majorities in the House. The problem is they ran on that repeal and replace for about 7.5 years, and they refused to do it. In fact, now that they have a president who would actually sign the bill, they balked from it. A lot of Republicans out in the heartland, the ones outside the Beltway and the Acela corridor, aren't happy about that, because that was a promise. That was one of the things that they actually got elected upon. But as you know, when you actually hold all of the power, that seems to be when the most there's the most difficulty to actually get something accomplished, because it's easy to rally around no. It's more difficult to rally around governing, because every single senator who has won, someone new, like a Ted Cruz, new-ish, I should say, ran in that far right side of the party. Well, he ran and won on that, so he is expected to hold that line. John McCain, someone who's more moderate, has been in the Senate forever, and he's expected to do, you know, he won on being more moderate. So everyone, because Republicans are in power, it's inevitable that this type of jockeying for position occurs, but they're going to have to come together within their own ranks in order to push something through. We're not even talking about Democrats yet. Let's focus on getting Republicans on board with what they want to do and actually fulfilling campaign promises they made to their constituents.
CBSN political contributor Hogan Gidley, thank you very much. Ed O'Keefe, great to talk with you as well, congressional reporter for the Washington Post. Gentlemen, thanks for the time.
Thank you.